Hello, welcome to my isolated talk. My name is Andrew Boulton. I'm a copywriter and I teach creative advertising at the University of Lincoln. Yay, Lincoln. I want to talk to you today about creativity in the wild. Now, there are some jobs that clearly have to be done where they need to be done. A submarine captain, for example, has to captain that submarine from inside the submarine. But professional creativity is clearly not quite as restricted by space or location, or at least it isn't supposed to be. Even if, like me, you're part of the Creative Lone Wolf Club, you're probably missing a lot of things about the studio. The space, the people, the atmosphere, the collaboration. Most of all, I think we're missing the creative environment where we usually have our best ideas. And I know that our students at Lincoln are finding it incredibly hard to be shut out of their studio. But the truth is that creatives don't do well in captivity. So this is actually probably a really good time to reflect on the constraints we impose on ourselves. And a big part of that are our desks. You see, I think your desk is captivity. I do think it's a kind of constraint. And even when we did have the freedom to go and work and think and create anywhere we liked, a lot of us volunteered for captivity, that safety and that familiarity. Now, one of my favourite books about the struggle to stay creative in the creative industries is How to Be a Graphic Designer Without Losing Your Soul by Adrian Shaughnessy. And in that book, Adrian says, our focus has narrowed. We rarely look at our work from a distance. We rarely look at it from different angles. We often work in miniature. We avoid anything that can't be done on the computer. The screen dictates our relationship to our work. It dictates how our work looks. So the screen has become a shackle, not just a tool of how we express ourselves creatively, but a condition of it. Now, throughout history, creative people, creative writers especially, have used and championed walking as a creative stimulant. Hemingway, C.S. Lewis, Nabokov called it the European urge to use your feet when others would choose to drive. And there's this wonderful quote from James Joyce in Portrait of an Artist, which I can't read because it's too hard, that talks about a lust of wandering in his feet that burned to set out for the ends of the earth. On, his heart seemed to cry. Now that's a mantra for life, especially a creative one. After all, the world is where ideas are. George Lois, that old creative buccaneer, said, if you're trying to achieve greatness in any creative industry, go out into the world and sail the ocean blue and live a life of discovery. And it's not just a creative indulgence, something we want to do to get away from the office a bit and pop to Greg's. There's proof that it works. There's evidence that movement makes a significant difference to our creative output. There's a study done by Stanford University called Give Your Ideas Some Legs, the positive effect of walking on creative thinking. And what they discovered was that walking brought about an increase in what they like to call appropriate novel idea generation, which sounds really sexy. They also said when there's a premium on generating new ideas in a workday, it should be beneficial to incorporate walks. In other words, there's real benefit, commercial benefit, in letting your creatives go out. Now, one of their theories for this positive effect was to do with associative memory, which is when we learn and recall the relationship between unrelated items. And that's what creativity is. Connections you didn't see at first. Connections you can then harness and exploit and turn into wonderful new ideas. Now, I also believe, perhaps less scientifically, that there's a parallel between wandering legs and wandering minds. And I believe the wandering mind, as opposed to the focused mind or the task-oriented mind, is the one that generates the most original and compelling creative thoughts. There's a wonderful book called The Creative Brain by Nancy C. Andreasen, and she says that a wandering mind leads to heightened perception, greater sensitivity to external stimuli, and increased intensity of experience. Now, unless all that sounds like it would somehow get in the way of your best ideas, shouldn't we all be encouraging our minds to wander? And what better example to set for our brain than to allow our legs to lead the way? There's a lovely and admittedly deeply pretentious word I like to use called terroir, and it's a wine word, it's a winey word, and it's used to describe all the different environmental factors like the soil, the climate, the vine, all of these things that will help determine the type and the quality of the grape that's grown. A lot of us, because of how and where we choose to work, are allowing our own very distinctive personal terroir to creep into our ideas, which is the opposite of what we should be doing. In other, less French words, there's a danger that only ever writing or creating in the same environment and through the same behaviours will only allow us to create in a style that's determined by the rigidity of that method. And then our creative output starts to carry this familiar telltale sense of where it originated. It ceases to feel like it understands the world it's talking about because it hasn't been there. Now I'm cheating you here. This is not new advice, but it is advice that needs taking more seriously. It needs repeating and repeating until there's a realization among creatives and creative businesses that ideas need sunlight, they need sky, they need air, and they need movement to grow. Brains, and especially creative brains, are disobedient and sulky, and they give up so easily. And we need to keep them happy and stimulated. We need to feed them with new things to appreciate and understand if we want them to come up with new thoughts. In his talk on this site, Rory Sutherland said we needed to be more awkward. And part of that is giving yourself permission to work where and how you will work best. Vicky Ross said we must write like real people speak. Well, the world is where real people are, and our desks, however safe they may feel, exist in a bubble that can very easily trick you into thinking you're in the real world. So thank you so much for listening. Please go outside, please walk, please wander, please let your mind do the same, and most of all, please donate. Thanks again.